At 3:10 a.m. on August 21, 1942, the narrow sand spit at Alligator Creek on Guadalcanal became the stage for a clash that would redefine defensive warfare in the Pacific. Under the ghostly illumination of the moon, roughly 200 Japanese soldiers advanced across the beach, their silhouettes barely distinguishable against the dark water and pale sand. American machine gunners, eyes trained through iron sights, counted the distance. 20 yards, 15, 10, close enough to see the faces of their enemies, to hear the breathing of men confident they were about to overrun a supposedly weak Marine position. Grenades were tossed casually, landing mere feet away. Every instinct screamed to open fire immediately. Every page of every manual insisted on engagement at maximum range. But on this night, the Marines held their fire, breaking the fundamental rules of defensive warfare. Major General Alexander Vandergrift had transformed the battle into a mathematics problem, pre-registering artillery coordinates, creating interlocking fields of fire, and positioning 37mm anti-tank canister rounds packed with 122 steel balls each, waiting like massive shotgun shells. The Japanese believed they were advancing on a vulnerable position, only to find themselves entering what would become the most precisely engineered killing field in Marine Corps history, a trap designed to exploit every predictable element of terrain, weapon capability, and human psychology. Colonel Kono Ichiki, aboard the destroyer Kagero, felt the intoxicating pull of victory fever as he approached Guadalcanal. His regiment, stripped of the honor of capturing Midway, sought to reclaim glory through a decisive, spectacular victory. Encouraged by reconnaissance that reported minimal American presence near Henderson Field and guided by intelligence estimating no more than 3,000 demoralized defenders, Ichiki advanced with 917 elite troops, confident that a swift night assault would overwhelm what he assumed to be a token force. He could not know that Vandergrift commanded nearly 11,000 Marines, whose defensive positions had been transformed over 2 weeks into a geometric web of overlapping fire, turning the natural topography into a deadly funnel of destruction. Where Marine doctrine traditionally emphasized aggressive patrols and forward engagement, Vandergrift had created a revolutionary approach: defensive warfare as precision engineering. The narrow approach to Henderson Field was funneled naturally toward the mouth of Alligator Creek, a shallow ford bordered by jungle to the south and open ocean to the north, restricting the enemy to a narrow advance. Lieutenant Colonel Edwin Pollock, commanding the 2nd Battalion of the 1st Marines, initially struggled with the concept of allowing enemy forces to approach within grenade range before firing, yet as he walked the positions day after day, the brilliance of Vandergrift's design became clear. This was not passive defense, it was mathematical warfare. Water-cooled M1917A1 Brownings were assigned to interlocking sectors. Pre-registered artillery coordinates ensured precise nighttime bombardment, and 37mm M3 guns with M2 canister rounds would act as massive, localized shotguns. The discipline required of the Marines was unprecedented. Machine gunners accustomed to engaging targets at hundreds of yards were instructed to wait until Japanese forces closed to 30 yards, while reserve units of Company G were prepared to counterattack any breach. This psychological burden was immense. The Marines had to trust in geometry and engineering over instinct, waiting until the enemy was almost on top of them before acting. The meticulous planning extended to ammunition management, with machine gun crews trained to fire in controlled bursts, canister rounds carefully allocated, and artillery pre-positioned for rapid, mathematically precise response. As August 20th faded into the night, intelligence confirmed the movement of a Japanese force along the coastal road, signaling the opening act of an engagement that would forever change American tactical thinking in the Pacific. Lieutenant Colonel Pollock had studied the terrain like a blueprint. The creek formed a natural barrier, its western bank slightly elevated, providing clear fields of fire across the narrow sand spit. Machine guns were sighted with surgical precision to eliminate dead space, and pre-registered reference points allowed gunners to deliver lethal accuracy in darkness. The 37mm canister rounds, optimized for the short distance of the sandspit, would produce devastating effect at the optimal moment, while artillery observers coordinated with gun crews miles away to ensure rounds impacted precisely where intended. The psychological challenge was staggering. Privates like Pomeroy, manning the water-cooled Browning, were required to suppress their natural survival instincts as enemy soldiers approached within hand grenade range. When the Japanese finally stepped into the designated kill zone at 3:10 a.m., the order to fire unleashed a controlled torrent of destruction. The 37mm guns opened first, their canister rounds sweeping the sand spit with lethal steel balls, shredding advancing troops and instantly shattering their momentum. Following this, the machine guns engaged in interlocking fields of fire, the sustained rate of 450 rounds per minute cutting down any survivors attempting to advance. The Japanese assault, initially confident and disciplined, dissolved into chaos as every predictable avenue of approach had been engineered into a deadly corridor. Some Japanese troops still managed to reach the western bank, briefly breaching the line, but Company G executed a rapid counterattack, restoring the defensive perimeter and leaving the attackers without opportunity to regroup. Mortars and 70mm infantry guns launched from the eastern bank attempted to disrupt the Marines, exploding with hellish illumination, but the pre-registered artillery and disciplined gunners held their positions. The second Japanese assault, approximately 150 strong, approached the same sand spit less than an hour later. Confident in their ability to overwhelm, they advanced in tighter formations, stepping over the bodies of fallen comrades, unaware that every adjustment the Marines had made during the first assault had refined the trap. Once again, at the precise moment they entered the kill zone, canister rounds and interlocking machine gun fire annihilated the attack, with the mathematical precision of the defensive engineering producing even more devastating results than the initial wave. By dawn, Japanese commanders attempted a flanking maneuver along the northern beach, wading through chest-deep water to bypass the heavily defended sand spit. Vandergrift's foresight had accounted for this as well. Marines on the northern line had clear fields of fire across the surf, while artillery pre-registered for this contingency rained down explosive shells, decimating the exposed attackers. The flanking attempt failed entirely, illustrating how defensive precision could neutralize innovative offensive thinking. As daylight broke, Vandergrift initiated the final phase of his plan: envelopment. The 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, under Lieutenant Colonel Cresswell, crossed Alligator Creek at a dry ford 3,000 yards inland, moving down the eastern bank in coordination with pre-registered artillery, collapsing the surviving Japanese forces into a tightening pocket. Marine tanks, previously held in reserve, provided direct fire support across the sandbar, while Marine Fighter Squadron 223 strafed any remaining escape routes along the beach. By 1700 hours, organized Japanese resistance had ended. The results were stark and numerical. Between 774 and 800 Japanese soldiers killed, only 15 captured, versus 34 to 44 Americans killed and roughly 75 wounded. The exchange ratio at the sand spit itself approached 20-1, a vindication of Vandergrift's methodical approach. Colonel Ichiki, the Japanese commander, was reported to have committed suicide, emblematic of the clash between traditional Japanese tactics and American mathematical precision. The battle validated not only the psychological endurance of the Marines, but the engineering and mechanical reliability of their weapons, from the water-cooled Browning machine guns to the 37mm canister rounds and pre-registered artillery, all of which performed exactly as predicted. Beyond this single engagement, the implications reshaped American defensive doctrine. Weeks later, the principles applied at Alligator Creek would inform strategies at Edson's Ridge, where approximately 3,000 Japanese troops suffered similar catastrophic losses against prepared Marine defenses employing the same mathematics-driven approach. Lieutenant Colonel Pollock, surveying the battlefield after the engagement, understood they had participated in an evolution of warfare, a shift from relying on individual heroics to harnessing collective precision and engineering. The Marines had demonstrated that with careful planning, discipline, and trust in geometric and mathematical principles, night attacks could be transformed into solvable equations rather than chaotic combat. Intelligence provided by Solomon Islander Jacob Veoza had enabled Vandergrift to calibrate his defensive system with exacting accuracy, underscoring the critical integration of human intelligence into engineered defenses. The victory proved that traditional doctrines emphasizing forward engagement and long-range fire could be systematically challenged and replaced with coordinated, close-range precision. Allowing enemy forces to close within grenade distance, a counterintuitive and psychologically taxing tactic, had yielded decisive results, establishing a new paradigm for infantry defense in the Pacific. The Battle of Alligator Creek illustrated the power of mathematics in warfare, turning terrain, weapons, and firepower into a calculated system capable of producing almost predictable outcomes. Its lessons would echo across Guadalcanal, Tarawa, and other island campaigns, creating a framework for defensive engineering where overlapping fields of fire, pre-registered artillery, disciplined fire control, and reserve counterattacks could achieve what traditional heroics alone could not. By turning close-range combat into a solvable equation, Vandergrift had not only won a battle but also reshaped the tactical landscape of the Pacific theater, proving that systematic engineering, precision, and trust in mathematics could triumph over raw courage and conventional doctrine. The night of August 21, 1942, would forever stand as a testament to the transformative power of combining strategy, science, and human discipline, marking the beginning of a new era in military operations where geometry, timing, and coordinated firepower could turn the tide of battle even under the cover of darkness, forever altering the approach to defensive warfare in the Pacific.